I'm really looking at this reality as like a computer. And many people have, right? Many people do. The motherboard,
Hmm.
the central processing unit, the hard drive. Um, what's your take on that? I mean, Jason, what does AIX fit into that equation? If we're living into, because simulation, right? We've done the simulation theory 3 times. I mean, name it simulation theory 4. But AIX, how does the AIX fit into perhaps this reality being just a computer?
Okay, I'll answer this one very fast from two different perspectives. One of them is some of the oldest traditions in the world, and the other one is from the Matrix movie series. The first one, the oldest traditions in the world, basically tell us the same story, that there was a golden age when nothing went wrong, people got everything they wanted, nobody really learned anything, it was luxurious, people got lazy and slothful, the gods got pissed off, and they initiated a cataclysm. That's in a nutshell. I just gave you thousands of years of history in a nutshell. Now, if that's the original scenario, then something else must have been introduced later to cause strife and contention, which leads to maturity and growth, something that the Golden Age people didn't enjoy. So let's move to the Matrix movie. In the Matrix movie, Neo, I don't know if it was the original Matrix, but it's one of the movies in the trilogy. Neo is specifically told by the architect. He is told by the architect of the different simulations that the different matrices that are created. And the first couple were the same scenario of the golden age when people could do and become anything they wanted to, and it was an absolute complete disaster. So they introduced the Agent Smiths into the system. They introduced the agitators that made things difficult. Now people had to work for the things that they wanted, and still they sometimes wouldn't get it. Some people would still die in poverty. So when they introduced the elements of danger and unhappiness, the Matrix became real, and now everybody believed it. This is what Neo was told by the architect. And so it totally makes sense that something happened to the original construct. Originally, a bunch of immortal souls were run through the system, and it didn't work because they got everything they wanted.
Yeah.
They used the simulacrum in the way it was supposed to be used as a co-creator relationship, and they helped build all kinds of worlds and systems. And they probably did. There's probably 1,000 different golden ages, and they were all badass. But in the end, not one of those immortal beings, which was us, ever matured or really developed or grew because we didn't know any real danger. We didn't really experience anything. So a new system had to be implemented where these immortal souls were actually convinced inside the constraints of the construct that death was real, that there was real consequences now, things were to be feared, and the only way that this could have been done was by entering a new program. I call it Artificial Intelligence X, a new program that would be the new agitator. And it would actually try to corral all these immortals into niches, polarized, so it can not only empower itself because it suffers from the law of diminishing returns, it also suffers from the law of entropy, and it also suffers from the law of conservation of energy. So it needs a power source, but the collective is plenty of power for it to do. It's a feedback loop.
Yep.
But the errants are those who are actually doing what the oversoul wanted from the beginning now. They're the ones recognizing that this is a relationship between them and the oversoul. They can be co-creators, and that they're going to have to go through the darkness in order to inherit their light. That's in a nutshell.
Well said. Jordan, what do you got on that, brother?
I think the way that and this could be building off of Jason's theory. I look at it like time is the most important element to all of this. And I think that if we were to consider what a golden age would be, it would probably be an age without death. It would be an immortality age. And whether we look at that, actually physically, it's up to debate. But I would venture to say it could be physical, that we just live forever in that golden age. And that is what actually leads to the complacency and the stagnation, if you will. So this is why Saturn is worshipped, because he is the Grim Reaper. He is Father Time. So when you add in that element of time, that's when you give this so-called agitator to the realm. So I look at what Jason's talking about, and what the architect is probably putting in as a variable here would just be mortality. It's giving you a timeline of life. And this is my philosophical, like run around of what this could possibly be. I think that in the prior iterations of this matrix and the origin, you had no death. And that's what led to the stagnation. That's what led to you being lazy and lackadaisical, etc. And then adding in the element of just you having a death was all it took for you to get your shit together. So now the Grim Reaper walks with you whilst you're here in this fourth dimension, right? And this is not a bad guy. It's not that death is a bad guy. It's actually the best part of this life is the fact that it has an end. Because if I gave you right now the opportunity to live forever, but then you just kept going and going and going, you would eventually probably hit a point of critical mass where you're like, just end it already. Just fucking rip the cord out, So people think they want immortality, but in actuality, if you had to live through it, especially physiologically, there would be this sense of boredom. There'd be this sense of why even accomplish anything? If I'm never going to die, then that means death isn't a fear. Now, if you look at this from both sides, this is fascinating because one of the elements that we have and that a lot of people who follow our works is that we're not afraid of death anymore. So it's like we have to be faced with this idea called death, this concept called death, but we no longer fear it. So this is what makes this AIX, or what I'm calling Saturn, or the Grim Reaper. This is what makes him become your homie. He's your friend now. This thing has no reason to fuck with you because it's like, oh, you don't fear me, so now I'm like a court jester. I'm here to make your life fun. You look at reality now like it's a circus or a zoo. So I'm here to just hold your hand, and we're gonna hang out together now. So when you stop fearing this mortality is when you really ascend. That's your ascension. And ultimately we would want death. Like, I know people say that they wouldn't, but so anyways, my last thing to say is that I just do feel like the transition out of the first iterations of the Matrix to the current would have just been that one variable is let's go from, we think what would make this the best would be giving them infinite life. And clearly that doesn't work. So let's give them death and see what happens. And it's clear as day to me that the New World Order flaunts this, through Skull and Bones and all their other symbolism. They show you that once you can be playful with this concept of death, well, then you've transcended the so-called soul trap, or the idea that you're trapped here. It's just by being fearless of life is what allows you to live.
Those are great. Both of you guys had some amazing